Hello, Flirties, and welcome to a brand new episode of Flirtations, signing on here at Flirt Headquarters to introduce a conversation all about polyamory with Leanne Yau. Y'all have been asking me for this conversation. Today, we're talking about the umbrella that is non-monogamy in dating. Before we get there, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, for tuning in, for checking out the show, for streaming, for watching, perhaps on YouTube, wherever you are in the world. I just really appreciate you being here. Thanks for being a part of all of these episodes. I ask you to please rate, review, subscribe to the show if you haven't already. Leave me a rating on whatever platform you're listening on, a review, a comment. Yes, it's so important for the algorithm to be like, this show's actually pretty good. We should show it and share it with more people so they can find out about the Flirt Coach and all of these amazing episodes and incredible guests, somehow approaching 140 main episodes. I can't even, I'm mind blown here at Flirt Headquarters, but thank you so much for being here. Yes, rate, review, subscribe if you haven't already. If you have, thank you so much. And then share this episode or another favorite episode with a friend, someone you want to share some BFE, big flirt energy with, or maybe they are curious about polyamory. They're poly-curious themselves and they need to hear this conversation, which is coming right now. Okay, let's get into it with Leanne Yau. Coming up on this episode of Flirtations, we're diving into the world of polyamory with Leanne Yau. Leanne is an award-winning polyamory educator, and through her platform, Polyphilia, she creates educational and entertaining content to help people navigate non-monogamous relationships with clarity, confidence, and compassion. Inside the episode, we'll get into what polyamory is and isn't, the biggest myths that surround it, what monogamous daters could learn from polyamorous, and how to take the first steps if you're poly-curious. We'll explore frameworks like the relationship escalator and relationship anarchy, the different types of polyamory, and cover dating essentials like communication, boundaries, and even jealousy. But that's not all. We answer some of your top questions like, when do I tell someone I'm polyamorous? What if I don't have much experience but am dating someone who does? And how do I know if polyamory is right for me? Whether you're new to polyamory or just curious, this conversation will give you insights and tools to approach dating and relationships with more ease. All right, Flirties, let's do this and meet Leanne.
I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. I heard you wanted to flirt. Hello, my name is Benjamin. I'm the Flirt Coach and a gay Libra. Everyone has an inner flirt.
Hey, Flirty.
Live, laugh, flirt.
Work the flirt.
Work the flirt. Delulu is the Salulu. Expert on the flirt.
Hey, Flirty. There's always another flirt.
Everyone has an inner flirt. Get out of your head and into the flirt.
Flirties, on the show today is Leanne Yau. Leanne is an award-winning polyamory educator, writer, speaker, and certified sex and relationships educator whose work is all about non-monogamy and sex positivity. She creates educational and entertaining multimedia content about forming healthy and sustainable non-monogamous relationships. Named as one of the 10 polyamory experts to follow on TikTok by Cosmopolitan Magazine and nominated for Sex and Relationships Creator of the Year in 2024, Leanne is here to guide us through a conversation about polyamory and so much more. Hi, Leanne, and welcome to the show.
Hi. Yeah, it's really nice to be here. And we were talking a little bit before, and I'm just really happy to be invited on the show to talk about polyamory, because it sounds like It's not a topic you've covered before.
Yes, it's been a highly requested conversation for the show, but there has been no episode on polyamory just yet until now. So thank you for making the time.
I'm honored. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm excited to get to know you more today. The Flirties, of course, came through with lots of questions about polyamory. How does this work? What happens if I'm starting to date someone that's been doing polyamorous dating relationships for a while? I'm new to it. We're going to help them through all the scenarios. I think this episode is really going to be designed for the poly-curious dater, for the flirty, for the dater that is relatively new to it, maybe has a little bit of experience, but still some questions about how all of this works. But before we get started, we got to get to know you a little bit more. So you started dating polyamorously in 2016.
Yes.
And I'm just curious how you discovered it and what those initial experiences were like for you.
Yeah. So I started my non-monogamy journey like pretty young. So like I was like 17 years old at the time. And so do the maths. And my partner and I at the time were about to embark in a long distance relationship because basically we were going to different places. Like he was going to be studying in the US. I was going to be with my family in China. For context, I'm based in the UK, but like I grew up in Hong Kong.
Okay.
And essentially like the topic came up of like, well, we're probably only going to be able to see each other in person like maybe 2 or 3 times a year max, because we're like, you know, like half a world away from each other. Yeah. And so there are going to be certain things that, you know, certain needs that won't be met, or like certain things that will be trickier, you know. And also I was aware that like he was going to university, and, you know, like there's always kind of so much that to explore and discover about yourself when you're at college, you know. And so it kind of very organically came up. And I was very fortunate to be in a relationship where like both of us were pretty much on the same page about non-monogamy. I know that a lot of people have a different experience where like there's typically one person who's a bit more reluctant and one person who's more enthusiastic, and sometimes those roles stay static and sometimes they change. But for me, like for my first like non-monogamous relationship, like both of us were keen, and it was just like, well, this makes sense because, you know, we're long distance, we don't want to break up, we don't want to lie and cheat on each other, but we also, you know, are realistic about like what being in a long distance relationship means, and we don't want to hold each other back from having new experiences. And so like that was where it started. And I'm not with that person anymore. It's been nearly a decade now. But yeah, like I basically just did that and never looked back. Because it was just, I think because I started so young as well, like I didn't really like have as much like baggage to like unlearn, and you know, like I hadn't internalized a lot of the stuff around like monogamy and commitment and relationships that a lot of people had. And I've just kind of carried that philosophy into adulthood, like, which is not to say that like, you know, like I say that it was a logical and practical decision for me, but I'm not trying to say that like monogamy is illogical or anything like that. Just to be clear, like I think there is a stereotype about like polyamorous people trying to convert everyone else, and you know, unfortunately that is true for some people, but like you know, broadly, like I think there's a lot of things that monogamous people can learn from polyamory. I think there's a lot of philosophy, so like in the non-monogamous community that can apply to all relationships in general. But like, you know, I believe in everyone choosing what relationship style works for them. And, you know, like, I think monogamy can be radical if it's consciously chosen and like intentionally formed, you know? So yeah, like that's the long and short of the background. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. We're going to get into some of the nuances about what those conversations looked like, how you can navigate establishing polyamory or non-monogamy. Are those the same things?
Yeah. So, great question. So like non-monogamy is like a broad umbrella term, right? So, you know, there's monogamy and then there's non-monogamy, and non-monogamy is obviously everything that's not monogamy. And under the non-monogamy umbrella, there's like subtypes, right? So then we've got like open relationships where people are typically like sexually open, but romantically closed. I think that's typically the meaning people go by these days, where like there is still like a primary romantic partner, but you know, you can fuck other people. Wait, can I swear on the show? That's okay, right?
Yes, you can.
Okay. I thought so. So there's open relationships, and then there's swinging, which is like typically like a recreational activity that like couples engage in like together. So like they'll meet people together, whether it's like other singles, like, or other couples, or like they'll go to parties kind of thing. And then there's also like kind of, I guess it's a spectrum, right? Like, you know, there's monogamish, like, which is where like you're broadly monogamous, but like maybe occasionally you'll have a threesome, or like, you know, maybe you'll make out with somebody at a club and it's like a one-time thing. So it's, like, I think it's not like strict categories, but it's, you know, like it's a broad spectrum. And even like in monogamy, right? Like there are some more expansive versions of monogamy where it's like, oh, like, you know, like we're not going to have sex with other people, but we can flirt with friends, right? Like, but some other people might be like, no, that's cheating, right? So it's a spectrum. And then polyamory is on like the furthest end of the, I guess the, you know, exclusivity to non-exclusivity kind of spectrum, where polyamory is the only type of non-monogamy that includes like full romantic non-exclusivity. So you're not just having kind of multiple sexual / kind of casual relationships, but you're also, you know, open to having multiple romantic partners. You know, it's kind of in the name polyamory, poly meaning many, amory from more meaning love. So like that's the main difference. And so polyamory is a subset of non-monogamy, but there are lots of different types of non-monogamy.
Okay, this is really helpful. This is going to be an educational lesson for the flirt coach. I've only ever dated monogamously, right? I've only ever had monogamous relationships. Polyamory or non-monogamy in general hasn't been something I've explored, even open relationships. So when I get these questions from the flirties on a Flirt Friday or in comments, something like that for the for flirtations, I'm like, how am I going to answer this? Right?
Yeah.
I can only speak from my experience and research a lot of times, but not having that experience, it's like I can't say this is what it was like for me, which is a really valuable piece of this like puzzle when you're helping people form dating and relationships, right? Helping people date and form relationships. So, all right. So we've got non-monogamy as a spectrum. Where under this umbrella, you have polyamory, you have open relationships. And so I want to stay here for a minute because some questions came through about just like, what is that difference between polyamory and having an open relationship? You got to some of the details a moment ago, but just like, how is polyamory, like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think non-monogamy and relationships in general are like a choose your own adventure type thing, right? So like,
I love that.
You know, like I think that, like there are broad brushstrokes, right? Like I think polyamory is probably like the relationship style where you have like the most openness and flexibility, or at least kind of potential for that, right? Because it's like, you know, you're also romantically non-exclusive, right? So there isn't that inbuilt hierarchy that comes with monogamy or like certain types of non-monogamy, you know, around like, okay, you still have that one primary romantic partner, they're still like, you know, your main priority, that kind of thing. But equally, I mean, you know, and we can get into this later, but like there are also like certain types of polyamory that are more hierarchical in nature, right? But I would say just the main difference is basically that with polyamory, you're like open to love, and kind of not just sex. And obviously like love is however you define it. Intimacy is however you define it. But that is that is the broad difference. And there is kind of less of an emphasis on hierarchy. Like I think in swinging culture in particular, there's like a real emphasis on like, you know, like, you're the real relationship and other people are just for fun. And it's, you know, and I think there can be a lot of joy in that. I've had a lot of kind of positive experiences at parties, like having group sex and orgies and that kind of thing, like over the years. Right. But it is different, right? Like from like just the emotional involvement of like having multiple concurrent relationships at the same time. Like, I think with non-monogamy, there's much more of an opportunity to have like contained experiences. Say like if you only have sex with other people at parties or at certain events, right? Whereas if you're having relationships with other people, like, you know, that's something that you have more consistently, you know, like these people are like in your life, you're seeing them regularly, like they don't just exist at the parties that you go to. So there's much more kind of emotional involvement, I suppose. There's less of an emphasis on hierarchy, generally speaking. And yeah, like I guess, but even then, you know, I think it really depends. Yeah. So that's a very long answer. Does that make sense?
That's really, really helpful where I'm starting to already distinguish. So for someone to have an open relationship, we're talking about, it sounds like a couple, two people, and they are primarily exploring connection outside of that primary relationship for physical reasons, for physical intimacy. They're out there hooking up, having some sex, doing whatever they do, but and maybe there's an agreement there, but how much discussion or conversation is happening in that core primary relationship? Is it a don't ask, don't tell kind of situation? Are they coming back and talking about it? That's where like the depends part of this comes in versus polyamory. It sounds like it's a little bit more open where maybe you have a core relationship that is two people and you're dating outside of that relationship, or maybe you have a core relationship that's three people.
Yeah, or four.
Or four.
You know, or just yourself.
Solo polyamory.
Yeah. Someone's done their research.
Yes, I did. I did a little bit of the flirt search. I had to for this one for sure. Yeah. Okay. So polyamory then there is this exploration of physical intimacy, perhaps doesn't have to be part of it, could be, but it's really about that emotional connection, intimacy, like looking to form relationships beyond just perhaps the physical.
Yeah, exactly. And, obviously, like, just like you can have sex without romance, you can also have romance without sex.
Absolutely.
And yeah, like, it's, like, that's why, like, non-monogamy, like, polyamory can be very compatible with, like, people trying to explore their sexuality, or, like, people who have maybe, like, different sex drives, but are otherwise very compatible, or even, if you're, like, if you're, like, asexual, in the asexual kind of spectrum, yeah, like, those two groups intersect a lot, because both the asexual and aromantic communities and the polyamorous communities, like, even though they sound like they're completely diametrically opposed, they actually overlap quite a lot, because both kind of challenge, like, love and relationships in similar ways, and kind of question, like, what it means to have sex, what it means to fall in love, what it means to have intimacy, and so yeah, absolutely, it's about. I mean, I don't think that, like, I think it's not so black and white, right? Like, I think you can find, like, intimacy and deep connection even with kind of, like, in, like, quote unquote casual sex, right?
Right.
You can have a lot of many beautiful experiences that way. And I think that I have to be very careful not to position polyamory as, like, the most enlightened form of non-monogamy, because some people do that and I don't like that. Like, I think you can have, like, a lot of really beautiful intimate experiences with, like, group sex and hooking up and stuff as well. It's just different, But yeah, like, I think there is, I guess, much more emphasis on the emotional as opposed to the physical, broadly speaking.
Okay. All right, we've got, I think, one more term to get to, and that is ethical non-monogamy. How does that fit into this conversation? So some questions coming through about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a semi-hot take about this.
Okay, let's go.
So basically, like, I think because whenever people talk about, like, open relationships, like, the automatic assumption that you get from people is like, oh, so you're basically cheating with permission, or this is like gentrified cheating is the term I've seen a lot. And I'm like, okay.
Oh my God.
And so I feel like it's created this defensiveness in the community where people are like, no, what we're doing is ethical and it's open and it's honest. And it's like, yes, that is true. And, like, ethical non-monogamy is different from cheating. But people don't say ethical monogamy. Like, people just say monogamy. Like,
right.
And so, like, I personally just say non-monogamy. Like, I don't feel the need to qualify it by saying, like, ethical non-monogamy, consensual non-monogamy, like, which is another term that people use. But consensual non-monogamy tends to be used a bit more in, like, academic studies, like, to distinguish from just non-monogamous behavior, like, biologically, like, in general.
Right.
So I think that's important for kind of specificity. But I think in just general day-to-day parlance, like, just saying non-monogamy is fine. Like, no cheater, like, kind of cheat, is going to call themselves non-monogamous. Like,
right.
And so, yeah. And even if they did, right, like, I think it's like, like, we don't need to be so defensive about being like, but we're not like those cheaters. We're not like them. Like, we are ethical. And it's, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about it, but they basically mean the same thing. I think it just depends on, like, whether you have a preference on, like, emphasizing, like, the label.
Yes.
For me, I don't, but for some other people, it's important to them.
Okay. All right. Really helpful. It sounds like ethical non-monogamy or consensual non-monogamy, if you're using some of those terms, it's a form of having an open relationship.
Yeah.
In a sense. But there's an agreement there. There's an understanding about what that openness looks like. So that if the core relationship is two people, both people are on the same page. What are those rules? Kind of what are those boundaries? All of that good stuff. All right. Let's get into, this has been a really helpful way to open the conversation. What are some of the around polyamory? Let's go there, Leanne.
Yeah, I mean, I already addressed one, which is people assuming that it's about cheating. And, and it's such an oxymoron, right? Like, because, like, cheating inherently requires, like, just going behind people's back and, like, lying and, like, a lack of permission and that kind of thing. Whereas, non-monogamy is about, like, like, everyone being on the same page, like, everything being above board, like, kind of discussing, like, what you want that to look like and kind of co-creating a relationship based on what you want and not what other people think you should do or what society kind of imposes on you, kind of thing. And so, like, I think a lot of people define cheating and, traditionally cheating as, like, when you have sex with more than one person or when you have sex with someone outside the relationship. And so a lot of people go, like, oh, that's cheating. But if you really think about it, cheating is just, broken agreements in a relationship. Cheating can look like anything. You know, like even in monogamous relationships, like I said earlier, like some people, it's like, oh, flirting with other people is cheating. Some other people might be like, no, it's fine. Some people might be like, watching porn without your partner is cheating. And some other people are like, no, it's fine. So yeah, like I think cheating is what you make of it, right? Like you get to decide what you think is permissible or not permissible in your relationship, and non-monogamous relationships are the same. And so what is fine for one person might not be fine for another, like regardless of how many people you're involved with. So I think that's the main thing. I think there's also an assumption that like kind of non-monogamous people are, I guess, in denial in some way, or that they're like failed monogamists.
Interesting.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah. And it's kind of very similar to when people say this about the queer community, like when people are like, oh, like you're a lesbian because you can't find a man. So the same thing is kind of imposed on non-monogamous people. It's like, oh, like, you know, you're non-monogamous because like, you know, you can't control yourself, or like you're like untrustworthy, or like you're just trying to be irresponsible, or you're immature. And yeah, like there is, you know, statistics have shown that like when presented with like a narrative of like, you know, this kind of random person, they change the details to add like, oh, this person is in an open relationship, people were more likely to rate that person as more untrustworthy or irresponsible, even if none of the other personal details were changed. Studies have shown that, yeah, like kind of non-monogamy is seen as immature and irresponsible and untrustworthy behavior when like, you know, and obviously like everyone has the potential to be messy, right? Like I'm not saying that all non-monogamous people are angels, but like, you know, like in terms of the philosophy and what we're aspiring towards, right? Like, you know, it's very much not about that. Like there's a huge culture around like open communication, consent, and like, you know, like intentional dating, like, you know, intentional agreements. And so, yeah, like it's actually like, you know, a huge commitment and a huge responsibility to be taking on like any form of non-monogamous relationship, because when you are operating outside the norm, like, you know, queer people will know this all too well. Like when you're operating outside the norm, like you really need to think about, okay, what do I want? Right? Like if you've been othered and you have no choice, then, you know, you have to think about like, okay, well, what actually makes me happy and what actually, you know, makes me feel like rewarded and fulfilled. And basically the same thing applies.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is so interesting. And another that went pretty viral for you recently was this, like that or non-monogamous people, polyamorous people are all about like, they're going to take your partners, right?
Yeah. Like, and again, this is the untrustworthy, irresponsible kind of narrative. It's like, oh, like these polyamorous people, they're just sex crazed, you know, like horny, degenerates. Yeah. Like, you know, like who are going to get, you know, I get told that like, I'll, you know, go get AIDS and die like all the time. But anyway, like, yeah, like there's, it's this kind of, it's kind of this kind of sexual deviant kind of stereotype. And so with that, like, yeah, there is the assumption like, oh, like, you know, I'm just here to steal your man or steal your girl or whatever. And it's like, no, like polyamorous people tend to want to date other polyamorous people because why would I want to be in a relationship with someone who wouldn't be happy with me being who I am and seeing other people, you know? Yeah, like I think that there's just so much bullshit around that basically, and people being really threatened by the idea of non-monogamy because, you know, like people are not taught to kind of question like sex and relationships, right? Like you're given a certain cookie cutter model and then you're like, okay, well, this is the path that gets you the most validation, and, you know, societal approval, and, you know, and you know, you get this all the time, right? Like people like having like a midlife crisis because they realize that they just went with what they were told they should do and what would make them happy. And then they wake up one day and they're like, oh my God, I'm married and I have kids and I never wanted any of this, right? And so I think for some people it's really threatening kind of seeing people make that active choice to do something that is so against the norm.
Right.
And they're happy, right? Like they are actively kind of joyful and, you know, fulfilled and, you know, and it's working more importantly, you know, like, and so I think people are just, like people project all kinds of things like onto me. Like, you know, I get so many comments all the time, like online and offline. And it's really interesting to see, like, it says a lot about the kind of the psyche, I guess, like of the people who kind of get threatened by this kind of stuff. Because if you were securely monogamous, if you knew that you wanted one person and you knew that your partner only wanted you, you wouldn't be so head up about this. You wouldn't be upset about this, right?
What's the big deal? Like, let people love how they want to love, kind of thing. Let people just date how they want to date. Like, this is so interesting. Like a few of the things I feel like I heard was this projection.
Yeah.
Right? The people maybe not understanding, or somehow they feel insecure within themselves about the relationships they're in, and to see you happy and this kind of like quote unquote non-traditional, just sort of breaking out of those binaries of what relationships are supposed to look like. It's like, but wait a second, that shouldn't work, right? They shouldn't be able to be happy. And I feel like sometimes that's what this is. All right, let's talk about the relationship escalator.
Yes.
For a moment. I loved when I found this in your content. And if you could describe what maybe the emotional as well, but the relationship escalator and what that looks like in dating.
Yeah. So the relationship escalator is basically a term that's used to refer to like the standard expectations and kind of steps that like you feel like you're supposed to take in order to be in a valid, committed, devoted relationship. So, it goes, you meet someone, you fall in love, at some point you go exclusive, you stop seeing other people. And then, the order of this change has changed, and some people opt out of various things. But the general expectation is that at some point you move in together, at some point you have kids, at some point you get married, right? What the order of that doesn't matter so much these days, but there's generally still that expectation. And generally you're supposed to stay together, have that white picket fence kind of thing. And, until you die, this is like talking about the relationship escalator and kind of questioning that is not unique to the non-monogamous community. But obviously we talk about it a lot more because we live in a society that encourages monogamy, that encourages certain steps to prove that your relationship is real. And, so a lot of non-monogamous people are like, well, what if I want to live on my own? Or like, what if I want to live with more than one partner? Or like, what if I don't want to get married at all to anyone? Or what if I don't want my own kids, but like maybe my partner like has kids and, I kind of chip in sometimes kind of thing. Like there's much more of an emphasis on kind of community and found family and kind of, choose your own adventure. Like I said earlier, kind of making your own thing. And so when people talk about the relationship escalator, we also talk about stepping off the relationship escalator. Okay. It's called the relationship escalator as opposed to the relationship stairs or the relationship ladder because, well, what do you do when you get on an escalator? You just you don't need to do anything. Like you go on it, right? Like
there's only one way to go. I mean,
there's only one way to go.
It's really hard.
And it's kind of speaking to that effortless, almost kind of just unconscious kind of forces, like like pushing you up the escalator.
The next step, right now.
People being like, well, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? When are you going to have another kid? Basically, so that's why it's called the relationship escalator because of the lack of kind of effort and the kind of unconscious thinking involved. And also that when you go on an escalator, it's very hard to go down on an escalator that goes up, right? And it's very hard to get off. So it's a very clever kind of metaphor in many ways. And, like a lot of monogamous people are questioning it too now, right? Like there are people who are talking about self-partnership and people who are talking about, living apart together relationships, like where like they're, together, but they don't live together. They're called like partnerships, because they're apart. And, people like being like child-free, right? Like, and, even just how that language has changed over time from like childless to child-free. And, people questioning marriage and whether, it's kind of like realistic or even an institution that you want to buy into, whether you want the state to get involved in all of that, right? So people are challenging all that in big ways and small. Polyamory, it takes it a step further and goes like, well, why even, restrict that to a romantic partnership? Like, why not get married to your friend? Right? Like if you have a friend who you feel like would be an absolutely banging co-parent, why not do that? And like your community doesn't have to be focused on just romance as well. Like, this is kind of getting into more like relationship anarchy kind of territory, like where basically it's applying political anarchist principles onto kind of human relationships and connection and just questioning like, well, we have all these structures and there is this assumption that you can only do those things with a romantic partner.
Yes.
Or what if we didn't do that? What if you got to pick and choose what kinds of things and what kinds of like dynamics and bonds, etc., that you wanted to make with just individual people in your life, So yeah, like there are not every polyamorous person is a relationship anarchist, but obviously the kind of principles they overlap quite a lot. And you don't have to be polyamorous to be a relationship anarchist. You can be monogamous. Right. So yeah, I got on a slight tangent there, but the relationship escalator and relationship anarchy, they like there's a lot of overlapping stuff in there.
Absolutely, so this is really helpful. I had relationship anarchy on the list to get to today, hopefully. So I'm glad we did. I remember when I met, I feel like the first person to describe relationship anarchy to me a little bit over a year ago. And I felt like my jaw was just sort of like getting wider and wider as he was talking. Like, what? You do what? This is, Because I've only ever, like, you don't see any of this represented really in media and culture, in literature. I mean, maybe more and more a little bit there, but there's pretty much just this binary of monogamous relationships that follow the traditional relationship escalator. And that is the path toward love. And that is what is going to get you safety and security and just everything that you want. And the non-monogamous communities are holding a mirror up to that to say, wait a second, maybe that doesn't work for me. Maybe there's some other ways to do this. Yeah. And I think, let's ask this question now. What can the monogamous community learn from the non-monogamous community? I think we have, I classify as myself as being monogamous still. I haven't explored something non-monogamous. So a lot. What do you think? What can I learn?
Yeah, I think that like more monogamous people could afford to like negotiate their relationships a bit more. Because, I think there is a general expectation of how monogamy and relationships should look, but you don't have to stick to that if you don't want to, what I said earlier, define what cheating looks like in your relationship, define like what your specific expectations are around like what commitment means to you. Okay. And like with that, right, like really question, hey, like, do we want to get married? Do we want to have kids? Do we want to live together? Do we want to share a bedroom or not? Right. Yeah. Like, and having the freedom to have those conversations without it being a whole thing around like, oh, if you don't want to share a bed with me, that means you don't love me. Like, and it's just, sometimes like people are like really, really romantically compatible, but they're not necessarily domestically compatible. And that's okay, like why throw out the baby with the bathwater, right? And I think just kind of acknowledging that there's kind of much more nuance to relationships than you think, and really just taking responsibility for like your life and making like active, intentional decisions about what you want out of your connections with people. I think another thing that monogamous people could learn from the non-monogamous community is, I guess, that connection, love, however you define it, is like not a finite resource. Like, you may not want to date more than one person at a time, and that's fine. Because there are plenty of reasons why, like someone might not want to do that, right? Like one being just time and energy. Like I'll be the first to admit, I'll be the first to admit it's a lot of fucking work, right? But
surely,
but like I think that like so many, like something I say a lot is that monogamy is not just simply about dating one person at a time. It's also this whole thing around like protecting your monogamous relationship from all potential threats. So, like I think most people have experienced like, they had a really good friend and then their friend like got a boyfriend or girlfriend or partner or whatever. And then suddenly they were seeing them a lot less, right? Yes. There is this huge emphasis on like making your partner like the center of your universe. And so I think that, less of that, right? Like would be good, not just because like it puts less kind of pressure on your partner to be everything to you, but it also puts less pressure on yourself and everyone around you. Like, it's basically just about like not like having a robust support system and not putting everything on one person, whether that's multiple romantic partners or like one person and some really close friends or like, your family and kind of wider community and whatever, right? Like I think everyone ideally kind of, should be able to have kind of multiple people that they can turn to for support and kind of have this kind of, mutual, like, responsibility thing kind of going on. Yeah. And it doesn't have to look like, multiple romances, right? Like it can be very radical, like, so, like I think just investing in your friendships, like as well as your romantic connection, and being unafraid to kind of question, just what you want your friendships to look like as well in general. Like, it's really ironic that for me, like, even though polyamory is about like multiple loves, etc., like I think it's actually really made me deepen and question like my friendships as well, because like I no longer have to worry about, oh, if I do this with my friend, my partner's going to get jealous, so I can't be that close because otherwise someone's going to get upset or insecure. Like, I don't have that concern anymore, so I have much more freedom to be like, like, I do have I guess quite non-traditional friendships, I suppose. Like, I have some friendships where they look kind of more like standard platonic, but then I have some friends who like I have like who are more kind of like lovers, or like, will like have sex occasionally, or, like, and it's all kind of very fluid and flexible, like depending on, what we agree on, right?
A little flirty with, maybe.
It's okay to flirt with, and as long as you talk about like what the flirting means to you, right? Like, I currently, I'm in currently one romantic relationship. That's just the point in time that you're finding me right now. But my longest term connection right now, like, is actually a friend with benefits that's been going on for 9 years.
Okay.
And we were romantic at one point in time for like 3 months, and then we were like, that was a bad idea, but the sex is really good, so let's keep doing that. And so it's like our friendship like has gone through so many iterations, and like that is what I call a relationship anarchist kind of connection, like, because like it's been so adaptable, and it's been highly negotiated. I've not felt confused at at any point, because we've been so open with each other about like how we're feeling and how we're adjusting and transitioning with each kind of phase, right? And like it's been nearly a decade, and like even though we're not like partners, right, in the traditional sense, like we are very committed to each other with friendship as the basis of the connection. So like I think it's great.
You were giving me so much to think about. I'm gonna have to listen back to my own episode, my own show multiple times, Leanne, to like feel like really understand a lot of this. And like one of the things I feel like I'm hearing you say is that non-monogamy is partly just challenging some of those assumptions that we've always been told, like one being that someone, right, you have one romantic partner and they just become your everything. It's like this two become one scenario, which like I've been in those relationships, and like you can kind of lose yourself a little bit. And I think part of what I'm hearing is maintaining not like this some personal autonomy, right? Still being your own person, even if you're in, let's say, a closed polyamorous relationship, right? It's just two people and you're sort of dating outside, but not looking to bring in perhaps a third or a fourth. Or maybe you're in that open relationship. It's just two people as the core relationship, but you are exploring some sex outside of that. It's like starting to open up and explore what relationships can look like. Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, I think that connecting with different people, no matter in what way, right? Like allows you to explore different facets of yourself. Like, meeting people, like, can be scary, but it also is beautiful. Like, like the things people bring out of you, the things that people expose you to and make you learn about, or, things that you might not have learned otherwise if you were like, just, in a little bubble, like with your partner. Because like, I think there's, I think a really big advantage of non-monogamy is like the kind of novelty and variety and excitement that you get. Like things always feel new and fresh, like with me, and kind of even like long-term relationships, because it's like we're always meeting new people, we're always changing, we're always learning about new things and being exposed to new things, and we can come back and be like, wow, look at this new, like this, I learned how to dance, like, or like I've realized I enjoy this kink, or like I tried this sex position that I'd never, like we would have never discovered otherwise, like, and that can be really cool. Yeah.
All right. In our remaining time today, we got to get into some of the nuanced conversations that you're going to be having out there dating and in perhaps your polyamorous relationships. One here being, because this came through a few times, some of the flirties are saying, they're dating and they're dating around, like they're dating multiple people. They're like, am I polyamorous? Am I just dating? What do you think?
So I think that if you are dating with the intention to eventually find one person to pick as your favorite and then settle down with in a monogamous relationship, you are not poly.
Okay.
You know, like, I think it's fine to date around. I think it's fine to keep your options open. But then, you know, like, it is a bit of a frustrating thing in the poly community when you meet someone who's like, yeah, I'm non-monogamous. And then later on, they're like, oh, I found someone to be monogamous with. And you fall in love with them. And you're like, what? You know? And so, yeah, like, don't call yourself poly if you're going to pick someone to be the one, you know? It's okay to date around, and it's okay to just say that. Right. And so, yeah, I think there is quite a crucial difference there. Like, I think you're allowed to, like, change your mind, right? Like, you're like, you know, if you go into it with the intent of like, oh yeah, like, I do want to be with more than one person and commit to multiple relationships. And then, like, you know, a couple months down the line, you're like, oh, actually, I don't know how I feel about this. Obviously, you're allowed to change your mind. But if you go into it being like, well, I'm just, you know, I'm keeping my options open, but I'm going to find the one, right? Like, then like, at the very least, say that, like, to the people that you're seeing, like, just so they know that there's a chance that they're going to get dumped if you find the one. Okay. You know?
That completely makes sense. I mean, related question. I think you may have just answered it, but if you are polyamorous, when do you tell someone in the dating process that you are? Is it first date? Like, when does that come up?
For me, it's in my profile. You know, like, I think dating apps are really great in that sense, because it means that you can just state, like, what you're on, what you're looking for in your profile. You don't need to go through all the mess of like, ooh, we're flirting. Let's see if we're actually compatible. I mean, there's still some of that still happens, obviously. You know, vetting is really important. But like, just being able to say like, hey, I'm polyamorous. If you don't like that, swipe left. And, you know, like, it just cuts out so much drama for me. Some people do it differently. I think it depends on what you want to get out of the first date as well, and your intentions from like a first date. Because for me, it's like a first date is a date. Whereas for some other people, it's like, oh, it's a vibe check, right? Okay. So if you're just kind of going into it being like, okay, I'm meeting up with this person to just get to know a person rather than to go on a date with that intention, then, you know, some people might disclose later on, like, you know, in the conversations, or they might disclose like in chat, like, or before they have sex, or, you know, but for me, like, I like to just vet them at the gate, you know, like, I don't want to be wasting my time. I don't want to waste other people's time. And I also don't want to deal with just potential disappointment or even anger from people who are like, well, I would never have talked to you if I knew this. Like, and I'm like, okay, like, fine. You know, so yeah, like, and it comes out kind of pretty early on.
Right up front. All right. I like that. And how about this one where this flirty says they are new to polyamory? They're perhaps going to explore it, but they are getting to know someone who is an established polyamorous, like that's someone that's been polyamorous for a long time, and they're feeling a little bit like, I'm new to this. What conversation should I be having? Is this a good idea? Have you encountered that situation? In your work?
Okay. So, yeah, I mean, you know, everyone starts somewhere, right?
Okay. That's true.
And I think what I would say actually is that it's very, very, very important that you don't get all of your knowledge about polyamory from the person that you're dating.
Okay.
This protects both you and them, because if someone is your partner as well as like your polyamory mentor / coach, it gets very weird very fast. You know, and also like, you know, you might be dating a polyamorous person who's a bit more experienced, but like just because they've been doing polyamory for X number of years, like doesn't mean they're good at it. And you know, like just duration does not equal wisdom. You know, and I think that like, well, generally speaking, obviously, like, yeah, there's certain things that you only learn through trial and error and stuff like that. Like, you know, like, when I met my current partner, like, you know, he'd only been polyamorous for like a year or so. And like, you know, but like we were very aligned in our values, and, you know, things have gone really, really well. Right. And equally, I've met people who've been poly for like 15 years or whatever, and they're crap at it. So I think, you know, to look out for yourself and also look out for just preserving the kind of, you know, dynamic in your relationship. Like, you know, do a lot of independent research, right? Like, don't just rely on your partner to like send you resources and send you recommendations of things. Like, do a lot of independent you know, work, like get to know other polyamorous people, you know, like diversify, right? Like your sources, you know, like read books,
follow you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Check out the socials, check out the YouTube. There's so much good information there. You've got a support community as well. Offering peer support.
Yes. Like I've been doing peer support for 4 years now. And I'm also like halfway through my training as a sex therapist.
Amazing.
So yeah, like, you know, like I think it's important to, just make sure I know what I'm doing and to get the kind of qualifications and stuff, right? Like, but yeah, like I've been doing this a while, and I work with a lot of people who are new to poly. I work with kind of couples and larger groups as well. And the things that have come up over the years, God, like,
I can only imagine. You probably heard it all at this point. And every time you think you have, then something new comes along.
Oh yeah, no, it's an adventure. It's really great. I love working with people one-on-one because non-monogamy is so nuanced. Like relationships are so nuanced. Like there's only so much. Like I mean, you get this as well, right? You put out a lot of advice online, and I think it's generally useful, and I think people take it and they're resonating with it and whatever. But like, it's never going to be universally applicable, right? And so, same with kind of polyamory. So it's really important to kind of, to me, like to connect with individual people and be like, okay, well, you might see me as an expert, relatively speaking, but I am not the expert on you, right? Like, so, you are the expert of your own lived experience. Like that's always been the kind of central to my ethos. Like it's, everyone gets to do their own thing. Like as long as everyone's on the same page, no one's getting hurt, do what you want.
That's my mindset as a coach as well, right? I come into every experience, call doesn't matter with that beginner's mindset. It's one of the first things we learned in coaching training is there's no way I can be the expert on your life, right? I can't know you more than you. So coming into that with a beginner's mindset, and then also coming into it with this expectation that I'm not here to fix you, right? I'm not here to exactly even tell you what to do, but to help you learn how to live your life and just show up for you in the best ways that you can, that feel most aligned, that feel most authentic. What's going on? What are some of those thoughts that are coming up? How can I help you get out of your own way? Because ultimately you're the one that's living your life, not me.
Exactly. No, I so resonate with that. Like, and it's like, like it's so interesting to see people like making kind of various decisions for like different reasons with different motivations, like I think it's like, don't just think about what you're doing, but also think about why you're doing it and how you're doing it. Right. Like that's kind of something that's like, that's definitely like how I conceptualize all of this, whether you're monogamous, polyamorous, whatever.
Let's see if we can get to two more quick questions. One here is, we got to bring up the jealousy piece of this because this came through. So I imagine that comes up in conversations you have and like in the questions you get. And so how do you help people navigate that jealousy component where you feel like someone's maybe liking someone a little bit more than they like you, or they're spending more time with someone than you? So some of the ways jealousy comes up and what we can do about it.
So what I would say firstly is that jealousy isn't just one thing. I think jealousy is actually quite a non-specific word, because I think jealousy looks very different for everyone. It can be caused by a variety of things. It can look very different ways. It can feel very different or sit very differently in your body, right? And so, everyone's jealousy is different. And so, when someone's like, okay, I feel jealous, I feel bad, like, it's like, okay, well, in what way, firstly kind of try and narrow down like what are this, kind of try and be more specific about the emotions that you're feeling, or at the very least kind of where it's sitting in your body, how it's activating you kind of thing. And then from there you can then figure out, okay, like why do I feel this way, right? Or what are the potential reasons why I might be feeling this way? And I think that there are, like, generally speaking, I try and separate it into like a mix of internal factors and external factors. So what I mean by that is, internal factors kind of that might influence your jealousy could be like past trauma or like insecurities or like beliefs that you might have internalized about love, sex, relationships, commitment that no longer serve you, right? And that's kind of stuff that is your responsibility to like, question and work on and that kind of stuff. And then there's like external factors, which is like, like stuff in your relationship. Maybe you have like a need that is genuinely not getting met. Maybe, like something's changed like in your life, like say like you've moved house or you've had a kid or whatever, like, and that's, really kind of shaking up the kind of base level stability that you have, and that's affecting your emotional state. Or maybe you have a shitty partner, right? Like sometimes you're jealous because your partner is giving you reasons to be jealous. And that's okay. So yeah, like I think there is this narrative in the community of like, oh, if you're jealous, you need to work on it and process through it. And I'm like, yes. And sometimes your partner is actually doing some wacky shit, you know? So I think jealousy, it's not fun to experience, but then it can be like a really useful way to like highlight like what's going on, right? Like whether with you or your partner or your life, you know, your outlook, your relationships, like in general.
Yeah.
And so I think like people need to be like in life in general, right? Like people need to learn to get comfortable with discomfort, or at least try and like, you know, figure out like, okay, you know, is this an emotion that will like pass and then it's fine? You know, do I just need to kind of be held, or like to hold myself like through this, or do I need to do something about this? You know,
do something.
You know, act or accept, right? So yeah, like you know, jealousy looks different for everyone. You know, it can be caused by, say, I don't know, fear of abandonment's a super common one, like just insecurity around like not being enough. There's you know, like possessiveness can come into it as well. Like you know, this is I think especially the case if you were socialized as a man, because you know, there's not only the whole mononormativity thing of like your partner is like, you know, like yours and you should kind of fuse into a single entity. But there's also the larger theme of, especially if you're in heterosexual relationships, like, you know, your woman is your property kind of stuff. And if she's with other people, then that threatens your masculinity. And there's an extra layer, I think, to unpack there for a lot of men who date women. And so that kind of comes into it as well. Sometimes it's grief. Sometimes it's just loss of like, this, like, you know, just grieving the relationship that you had before and like grieving that change, right? And kind of fear of change and fear of instability and like the fear of just like no longer having that, you know, standard path of validation, you know, because you've stepped off the beaten track, right?
Yeah,
so it can be so many things. It can be so many things, right? Like, and it's so interesting, like kind of speaking to individuals and finding out like, well, what does your jealousy look like? So I think it's just important for everyone to interrogate that. And again, you know, like people feel jealous in monogamy as well. So I think that's also important to interrogate.
Yeah. Really, this has been fascinating. We're going to end here just with a tip or two for the flirty, the polycurious dater out there exploring polyamory perhaps for the first time, and how they can just start to identify what some of those core needs are, right? What is it they're looking for? Is it a similar process for monogamy, or is it maybe just a little bit different?
I think there's probably a lot more kind of room for negotiation, I guess, like if you're having multiple romantic relationships, and because, you know, you're not just thinking like, well, if I'm having a romantic connection that looks like this and it's with one person.
Yes.
But yeah, like I think this is different for everyone. Like I think at baseline, right, like, you know, be in connections that feel good to you, right? Like that challenge you positively, right? That nurture you, and, you know, that have like communication and respect and trust. And, you know, all of that good stuff. And, you know, obviously, like, like a big thing in polyamory is about like getting different things from different people and exploring different facets of yourself. But like, that doesn't mean drop your standards. Like, you know, like this is like, I cannot remember who came up with this term, but there's a term like in the community called Frankenpoly. Which is basically like where you Frankenstein like a partner together with like multiple mediocre partners to make one like possible relationship. And it's like, don't do that.
Yes, flirties, please don't do that.
You know, like how you're allowed to kind of like, yes, you know, work through your insecurities, like notice your discomforts and, you know, talk about those things, right? But also you're allowed to be uncomfortable with certain stuff. You're allowed to have boundaries. Like just because someone's like, well, that's not how we do poly. Like, you know, that doesn't mean that you have to follow that, you know?
Okay.
So again, it's about think for yourself, right? Make active, intentional choices for yourself, regardless of, you know, how many people you want to be getting involved with, like simultaneously or not, you know?
All right. This has been so helpful. Yes, your standards, your boundaries, all of that good stuff. They're still a part of this. I mean, you're still dating.
Yeah, absolutely.
We got to keep all of those things in place. I'm going to send the flirties your way. I think they're going to have more questions, want more information, just how all of this works, seeking support. Where can they find you, follow you, and learn more?
Yeah, so you can find me, like I'm at the same handle on pretty much every platform that you can think of. It's Polyphilia blog, so that's POLYPHIRIABLOG. And my website is polyphilia.blog. Very easy. I've made it very easy for people to find me. I'm most active on Instagram. That's where you'll find the majority of my content. But yeah, I'm also on kind of other places like YouTube, TikTok, Threads, whatever.
Okay.
And yeah, I offer peer support. So if you want to kind of speak to me, like like about your specific situation, then, you can book a session with me. I have a Patreon where I talk a little bit more about my personal life on there, and, give like case studies from my personal life and, that kind of thing. And I have a newsletter, and I'm doing kind of workshops and events. I always have kind of online workshops going on. So, check out my stuff and I'll probably have like an online event kind of happening. So, yeah.
Well, I will have all those links in the show notes below for this episode and send the flirties your way. Leanne Yau, thank you so much for being on the show today. A first for Flirtations on polyamory and non-monogamous relationships. This has been fascinating, and I myself have learned a ton. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much. And I hope the other people, enjoyed listening to us as much as I enjoyed recording with you.
All right, Flirties, that's a wrap on this episode of Flirtations, the polyamory episode of the program with the incredible Leanne Yau. Leanne, thank you so much for being on the show today. I've got some amazing links in the show notes below for this episode to follow Leanne on Instagram. She's got just really, really good information she's posting over there. And then to check out her YouTube for some longer form videos, even some speaking events she's done. Yeah, all of that is there for you. If you're like, yes, I'm poly-curious, I'm interested, but I want to learn more. I've got some additional questions. I guarantee you Leanne has got an answer in the peer support group. Yeah, maybe checking that out for yourself as well. All right, Flirties, thank you for listening, for tuning in, for streaming, wherever you may be in the world. None of this is possible without you and your listens, your downloads, your streams, and your support. So please rate, review, subscribe to the show. Leave me a comment, a thumbs up, anything on whatever platform you're listening or watching on. Yes, it just helps immensely to keep growing the show and keep getting amazing guests and bringing you all of these conversations. And then share this episode or another favorite episode with someone you want to share some BFE, big flirt energy with, that's maybe also poly-curious. Share this episode with them. All right, check here at Flirt Headquarters, signing off officially. My name is Benjamin. I'm the flirt coach and gay Libra Flirty. Happy flirting.